what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Kelly. Wait a sec. Kelly, what's your last name?
It's Groth, Groth.
Okay, why don't you, she's going to be talking about, let's get over here. So many measures. This is about the city approval of affordable housing measure. Still, none of these have numbers yet. And she is going to be discussing.
Letters, George.
I'm sorry?
Letters. They don't have letters yet.
Whatever. She is going to be talking about the opponent argument. So go ahead.
Just a minute, can
Yeah,
somebody
well-
send the link to Claire? She says she can't get on. Can somebody send the link to Claire to
I
get on?
can't do it.
I'll try.
Thanks.
Okay, starting the clock now on Kelly.
Okay, Kelly, 5 minutes and then questions.
Great, thank you. So I'm Kelly. I'm actually with the proponent for Affordable Housing Production Act, which is Supervisor Chan's measure. There's a similar sounding measure, city approval of affordable housing, but I will speak a little bit in my 5 minutes as to how they're a little bit different. So thanks so much for having me. This measure is aimed at addressing our affordable housing problem. We haven't really seen the truth of if we build more market rate that the rent costs will come down. We're actually we're building over our market rate housing goals by 151%. And by contrast, we've only built less than 50% of our affordable housing needs. And housing prices are still, really, really high. Families are being evicted, priced out, and, people are getting pushed out onto the streets. So for the homes, we've titled it Homes for Families and Workers, a little bit friendlier than Affordable Housing Production Act. This will accelerate the process to build real affordable housing. It waives CEQA and discretionary review for projects that are one of the following 3 projects. Projects that provide 100% affordable housing, affordable educator and teacher housing. So think about Prop E that was on the ballot in 2019. This would allow for it to get built faster. In addition to multifamily housing and market rate developments, it would require up to 30% affordable housing units and include 2 and 3 bedrooms. So we're not just building affordable studios or 1 bedrooms, we're actually building it for families who need it. One of the key differences between the 2 housing measures is that ours keeps affordable at the current income level, which is 120% AMI. So that's about 116,000 per year, or I want to say just over $3,000 for a studio. However, the other measure raises the affordability to 140% AMI. So people who make about $135,000 a year will qualify for affordable housing. But that also increases the definition of affordable housing units. So it'll be almost $4,000 for a studio, and that will be called affordable housing. Homes for Families and Workers requires multifamily housing and projects that I mentioned earlier, whereas the other measure just allows for studios. So there's no requirement and no incentive for them to build family housing. Ours also provides a big boost to workers. It requires developers to pay a prevailing wage and employ skilled and trained workers, which essentially they have to be in a state certified program that is approved, works with labor to make sure that they have the right standards. And the other does not. We are supported by the, pardon?
2 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. So we're supported by the Labor Council. The San Francisco Building Trades is working to endorse our measure. They're opposed to the other housing measure. Homes for Families and Workers will ensure that those who build our housing can actually afford to live in it. So if we want to keep families in San Francisco, keep vulnerable residents in their homes, I ask for your support for Homes for Families and Workers. And with my remaining minutes, I'll just run through our endorsers really quick. We're in, obviously, Supervisor Chan, Board President Shimon Walton, Supervisors Peskin, Preston, Ronan, and Marr, United Educators of San Francisco, and Unite Here Local 2. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, 1 minute more. Although we,
Can I use a minute for questions?
you know,
Yeah.
I'll just add that to questions.
Great.
No, I guess I'll start with a question. Do you use a city AMI or the 3-county AMI?
So that depends. That depends on what the mayor's office of community development. So we actually are, I believe that MoCD will use the city's AMI. We just went through the ballot simplification committee, and that's the chart that they pulled from, was the city AMI.
Okay. And then second question, if no one wants to interject. You probably know about 1225 Irving, which they tried to build, and they found several problems with the contaminants and that kind of thing. And the Cortese Act also has 2,000 locations in San Francisco. How do you expect to build with so many potential environmental problems, just simply not use CEQA?
So the Cortese list, we would still have to look at a site, and if it's on that list,
Hi,
I'm
Glenn.
not entirely
Recording
sure of the
meeting.
process. But essentially, that even though we exempt CEQA, if a site is on the Cortese Maher list, there.
I don't know. I
be a
can't look it
certain-
up because I'm on screen and I'm on the phone
Sorry.
with you. And
Hey,
I'm also
Charles, can you
on
mute
my
yourself?
clock. Try calling Al. Yes.
I'm
That's okay.
these things happen.
It happens, even 3 years
We're
in.
a volunteer group. So
No worries. I'll basically say, so we actually got this question from Supervisor Marr, as 2550 Irving is in his district, and I'm not sure of the full details. My apologies. I'm mostly working on the measure, but I know that eligible projects on the Cortese list or part of the Maher program would need to comply with certain standards or ordinances applicable to those sites, but it wouldn't need CEQA review by the city. So it would go through its own process because of the Cortese Maher list.
okay, I can add a lot to that, but somebody else, please. Questions?
I got my hand raised.
Oh, there, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And Thomasita had hers too, but the background color, you can't see the hand.
Where are you, Thomasita? I
At
can't
any
even find
rate,
her.
at any rate, I would just mention that I kind of looked at that and tried to follow some of it. The problem seems, what doesn't make sense to me about the Cortese list and all of these basic sites that are contaminated is, why don't they take care of the contamination before they even bother to look at anything going on in it? Because what you have is no real program to do the work. We have one of these across the street. There's this idea that we're going to study it, we're going to mitigate it, or if we can't mitigate it, then we're just going to do it anyway. So there's really no realistic solution that we are aware of. That has maybe nothing to do except just your questions about the Cortese. Now, George may have another comment.
We need a question, yeah. What, Mary Eliza, what was your question? Can people hear me?
I can hear you.
Huh. I guess I lost Mary Eliza. All right. There's a big difference in Cortese sites, which were traditionally gasoline oriented versus this was a laundry and a mortuary. And both of them were using different toxic type fumes or chemicals. But anyhow, so Cortese only looked at a few environmental fumes. But I'm thinking, because of the time, since you're here and you have your own measure, because you were the opponent on the city approval of affordable housing. I know you really want to talk about Affordable Housing Production Act. Why don't you give us 2 or 3 minutes on that? Because it sounds pretty good. I'd like to hear more. So can you do that?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. So I just did the proponent for Affordable Housing Production Act. So you want me to speak more on the opposition to the
Connie is the opponent argument for city approval of affordable housing. She is the proponent for Affordable Housing Production Act.
mhm.
So I know you blended them both.
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying to make
I mostly
sure.
presented on Affordable Housing Production Act. So for the opponent, that's why I wanted to bring on Joseph, because we're actually going to be giving it to the race and equity and sorry, I'm really bad with acronyms this week. Race, equity, and all planning. So they essentially kind of talk about why raising the 140% AMI is will be detrimental to a lot of working class families. People won't be able to afford those affordable units. It also eliminates Charter Section 9.118 of the Board of Supervisors. So currently, Board of Supervisors will anything that's over $1 million for a contract with the city, the Board of Supervisors has to approve it. The YIMBY measure would remove that authority with the housing project. So we don't have any oversight or say into where our city dollars are going to. So developers can, make sweetheart deals. The other thing is that the Connie's measure requires that developers to build within 24 months of receiving the permit, otherwise it will expire. So we're actually really incentivizing them to speed up production on building affordable housing, whereas the YIMBYs allow for 36 months. And they can, kind of do a bait and switch where they can, basically get awarded a contract and then switch it to another developer with no board oversight. So I hope I did it as best as Joseph would do.
Hey, George, you have a question from Thomasita on the previous thing.
Yeah, Thomasita, please.
First of all, I'm wondering, would Supervisor Connie Chan consider running for president, please?
I'll get back to you on that.
Because, I've been irritated all these years. Every time they put up housing, they act like if 15% affordable was going to solve the affordable housing. You're building 85% market rate all around the city. And the affordable housing crisis is not being dealt with. And her legislation is a really good step. I really appreciate that she makes an effort to bring compromise. She tried with JFK Drive, and now she's done this. And I hope that it survives in court, the challenge from the mayor's people, because I'm just sick of this constant market rate housing being called some sort of a solution, which it's not. And then we're getting gaslighted by Gavin Newsom saying that he wants to question San Francisco's building. And then even the newspaper had an article, it might have been the Examiner, saying the city's not building enough housing. We're building way too much housing. It's the wrong kind for the problem. So thank you. And please thank Supervisor
2
Chan.
minutes.
Thank you, Thomasita. I forgot to add to, Tomasich reminded me, so we require up to 30%, that's 8% on top of the city requirement of affordable housing, whereas the YIMBY measure is very tricky. They say 15% of the city requirement, which ends up being like 3% more as opposed to ours is being 8%. So they're increasing affordable housing by like that much.
Okay.
1 minute.
Well, I do have one more question. Does anyone else have a question? No?
I think you did a really good job on explaining the difference.
She
Thank you.
did.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to ask real quick, when the city approval of affordable housing, they go up to an AMI of 140. And the reason that they're doing that is early responders and nurses, because they're making more money and they want to keep at least police in the city. The problem is they get so far away from affordable housing that the people who can really use it can no longer get it.
30 seconds.
So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so with our, I think that falls into Prop E, which is the definition that we use. So if they build the educator workforce housing that I mentioned, that goes up to 160 AMI, but you have to have work basically for SFUSD or in basically for the city. I believe it's SFUSD or City College currently to be able to qualify for that housing. So this is streamlining actually building that housing that Prop E wanted to zone for.
Time.
That's great. That's really great. Our next speaker actually starts at 7 o'clock sharp. So they asked for that time and I booked them. So in an odd way, we have time. It would be Tilly Chang, who is the head director of the San Francisco County Transportation Authority, to talk about let's see, it's simple. It's the sales tax for transportation, and she would be debating Larry Marceau, who is a financial analyst. And Larry was the person who was responsible for the Prop A bond, $400 million bond failing. So I would love like about 2 more questions, because I don't see them here. I don't want to skip them, but
George, don't you have anybody else who can speak about anything?
yeah, I do.
I could go. I'm here.
Yeah, and
I'm Rachel Alonso, and I'm here for Supervisor Peskin's measure regarding the Department of Public
okay.
Works. Yeah,
Okay.
do you want me to go?
Yeah, Aaron told me he was going to send somebody, he just never said
It's me.
who.
Surprise.
Okay, Rachel.
Okay, starting now.
Okay, starting now. Good evening. Thank you for having me. My day job is with the San Francisco City Administrator's Office, where for the past year, I've been overseeing the planning and implementation of Proposition B. But I'm speaking to you tonight during my own free personal time, not in any official capacity as a city representative. So just had to get that out there. First, a bit of background. So in November 2020, 61% of voters approved Prop B in the wake of a corruption scandal in San Francisco's Public Works Department. So the goal of Prop B was to clean up San Francisco's dirty streets and dirty department And I'm sure we can all agree with both of those goals. So Prop B's intention was good, and both goals are still important and very valid. In order to achieve these goals, Prop B did two main things. So first, it split the Department of Public Works into two, transforming the Operations Division into the new Sanitation and Streets Department, or SAS. And the SAS department is slated to form on October 1st. Now, the second thing that Prop B did is create two public oversight bodies, one to oversee each department. The inaugural meetings of the oversight bodies were actually held 2 weeks ago. So if you're interested, you can catch the video on sfgovtv.org. And my dog just joined me, so you may get to see him. So last month, 8 members of the Board of Supervisors voted to place a measure on the November ballot to modify some of Prop B's provisions. We like to call it oversight done right, because the two oversight commissions would continue on uninterrupted, but the department split would be reversed. Creating a separate department is inefficient and costly, and I'm sure that we can all agree that we want San Francisco city government to be more efficient and cost-effective, not less. So let's talk about costs. This new ballot measure would save $3.5 million in the current fiscal year, $2.5 million in the following fiscal year. And then after that, the annual cost savings would jump up to a minimum of $10 million per year. Prop B did not include any additional funding for additional street cleaning services. And so rather than spending our limited taxpayer dollars on duplicative managerial and administrative positions, I'd rather that money go towards direct services. More departments and siloization of services does not guarantee better government services or cleaner streets. Something that hasn't been talked about very much, but which I've found to be critical through my work over the past year, is that the Operations Division of Public Works, and again, that division is the piece that's slated to become the new SAS department, it does a lot more than just clean streets. So
2 minutes.
thank you. Other services include tree trimming and road repaving, potholes, building maintenance. Those are also in that same group. And so these functions, along with the design and construction and capital project responsibilities housed within the rest of the department, they've been co-located together within the Public Works Department for more than 120 years. So the folks in operations are maintaining the things that are built by the capital side of the department. Splitting up the department challenges the way that work is currently coordinated and jointly performed, and it threatens to increase the cost and time of delivering capital projects. It makes government less efficient. So as one department, those different groups are better able to collaborate and work together to make smart investments that take long-term maintenance into consideration of the designs and what gets built. So we can have agreements to govern and mandate continued coordination in the short term, but I'm worried that as new leadership is put in place, the departments will inevitably drift apart, relationships between staff will erode and not end up being rebuilt in the same strong manner as we have now. And eventually DPW and SAS will treat each other as completely separate entities.
1 minute.
1 minute left?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So besides diverting limited taxpayer dollars from direct services, splitting up the department also poses a financial challenge to the long-term viability of each department by making the work more expensive. It makes it more expensive to deliver services. But besides everything I've just covered, one other thing, the corruption scandal from 2020. It made clear the need to root out misconduct no matter where it's found. And now that the two commissions have officially formed and are holding a total of 3 meetings per month, there's a new unprecedented level of transparency and scrutiny for the Public Works Department. Creating another department is not a safeguard against corruption, and the two oversight bodies will remain to provide transparency and accountability. And I heard the chimes, so I'm guessing my time is up. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. We talked about in my group, the Telegraph Hill Dwellers, we were kind of wondering, I mean, it kind of looks like we've just gone through this process of splitting them up, and now 2 years later, we're suddenly putting them back together again. And it just, on the face of it, seems a little bit chaotic. And it's just kind of, how would you respond to that?
I would agree with you completely. It does feel chaotic. I personally feel that it's the right thing to do to keep the department together. And because the split hasn't happened yet, the split won't happen until October 1st. This is actually the right time. I wish it had happened earlier, that folks on the board had realized earlier about these risks of the split, but they realized it when they realized it, and I'm grateful that it's not quite too late. So I agree, I wish it had happened sooner. Once it happens, it would be difficult to undo it once we've started down a certain path. And the other element that I think, I think, how did we get here, right? Why now? Why not before? I think Prop B was put together, very reactively to respond to these real legitimate crises. And I think at that time, and it was COVID and there was a lot going on. And I think people weren't able to sit down and reflect or have the time to think through and communicate the potential ramifications and impacts of doing the department split. So I think, in some ways it's a hindsight is 2020 kind of the thing, but somehow right now we have, or the board has the ability to try to adjust and correct what it regrets having approved before.
Glenn,
Thank you. I heard that there was the controller's office was not automatically going to be looking at the DPW, and that I thought was somewhat of a problem. Although you do describe a number of transparencies into the organization that make me feel better about it. But this request for a controller to somehow be invited to look at them, look at DPW seems to be a little annoying or bothersome to me. What do you think?
I think that is a great question, and it's something I've heard before. So here's how I would respond to it. And it's called the Controller's Annual Cost and Waste Analysis. So that is one of the Prop B mandates.
2 minutes.
Thank you. So all of the mandates were removed. Many other charter departments and charter commissions don't have the explicit mandates that we have under Prop B. Much of that annual mandate was relevant due to the department split and forcing shared administrative services between the two departments for the first 2 years. So SAS is forbidden from having its own budget, accounting, IT, contracts, et cetera, until 2024 at the earliest. And so that's where they saw inefficiencies, and much of the mandate was written around that. And so because this charter measure repeals that split, that's why the annual audit is not seen as necessary. But the controller's office has the power per charter section F1.101 to audit city departments for efficiencies or inefficiencies and performance. And so really the only thing that repealing this language does is walk back the mandate that DPW and SAS in particular have to be audited once per year. It does not reduce the controller's office's authority in any way. So every year, CON puts together an annual work plan and it looks at needs across the city. And if it determines that DPW needs to be audited annually or otherwise, it may do so. But forcing CON to focus on DPW and SAS every year means that CON has fewer resources available to investigate other departments, which may have a higher need in any given year.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
I do want to say one thing. The way this is written is very convoluted. And I know you've probably spent way too much time of your life on Prop B. And so no, that's not a bad comment. It's a good comment. But the one thing I didn't hear, and I guess I won't hear tonight, is I'm still not understanding why you're getting rid of the second commission. It might have been good to have the second commission.
We're keeping it. We'll have two.
You will,
Yep,
because I was thinking you should keep it. All
Yep.
right,
yep.
your time's up.
Thank
But
you.
thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we have really great people here to talk about the sales tax, the reauthorization of the sales tax for the Transportation Authority. We have Tilly Chang, and she is the actual director of the SFCTA, which is, it's hard to get to the top. She's been on the top a long time. So I think she's going to be around a long time. And then we have also a really intelligent financial analyst named Larry Marceau. And some of you are familiar with him because he was the lead opponent on the Prop A bond and was actually able to defeat the $400 million bond almost single-handedly. So we're at a point now where it's time to start, and the proponent, of course, would be Tilly. And Tilly, what you get is you get 5 minutes, and then Larry, you get 5 minutes, and then we'll try to mix questions that are generic that both people can have equal time to answer. You're both really important, so we want to spend some time on this. So, Tilly,
Just
why?
before you start, I'm sorry, but I find it really annoying. The 2 minutes, the 1 minute, right when someone's talking. Can we hold up a sign or something that they can see that says 1 minute, 2 minutes? Because it's on my last nerve that it's interrupting the people just as they speak, and it's shouting out, and can we do it
Yeah,
another way, please?
maybe just 30 minutes before the end. Let's do that if you don't mind. Is
Or hold
that all
the
right with
sign
you,
up.
Mary?
Well,
Well, I'm the timer. I'll try to come up with some signs really quick.
Some
Oh,
hand signals.
It's
One,
not
two.
hard to write 1 minute,
Fingers.
30 seconds.
yeah,
you.
raise up, something in front of the screen. Do that. There you go.
I don't have anything yet. Wait until I do. But starting, and I'll start timing you now.
okay, go ahead, Tilly.
Hey, thanks, George. Hi, everyone. It's very nice to be with you. Thank you for having me. I am your County Transportation Authority Director by day, but I'm here in my personal capacity so that I can play the role of the proponent here. I wanted to start by also just saying that the campaign that I'm representing is the yes on whatever the measures letter will be, but it's the Better Roads and Transit campaign. The proposal is to extend our current half-cent transportation sales tax for another 30 years. So you may or may not know that we've had this since 1989 when it was first created by voters. And our agency, the San Francisco County Transportation Agency, has been managing it over these 30 years. And we're governed by the Board of Supervisors, as you know, the 11 members. They are our board, and they oversee and decide how the funds are used according to the expenditure plan that the voters approved. Now, after it was first established in '89, it was reauthorized in 2003. And that was 7 years ahead of when the original measure was going to expire, because the major projects in that first plan, which were the Embarcadero roadway, after taking down the freeway, and some other major investments, those were already completed. So in 2003, I actually started in 2003, George. So I've been around for almost 20 years. And that measure was timed in year 13 because, again, other projects were coming along, namely the transit center downtown to replace the old dilapidated bus terminal, and then the idea of bringing Caltrain and high-speed rail into the basement. Doyle Drive, which we did replace on time and on budget and now has a beautiful Tunnel Tops Park above it. I hope you have a chance to visit. In addition, electrification of Caltrain, which is about to open, then SBRT that just opened, the Geary BRT, and then Central Subway. All the major projects from the 2003 plan are completed or about to be opened. Now we have a whole new generation of projects, large and small, that we are trying to get funded. And because there has been a recent historic infrastructure bill, the timing is critical. Not only to take advantage of that and put up the new projects for grants and have a local sales tax to provide local match, but also because some categories in this current measure did accelerate their spending. And that includes traffic calming. That includes paratransit for seniors and disabled folks, because during the pandemic, there was a high need for paratransit services, and a few other categories as well. So our hope now is to use this time to establish a whole new expenditure plan that would supersede the current plan and then extend the sales tax 30 years to implement the new plan. It's $2.6 billion of capital, mostly capital improvements for every mode of transportation, whether you're a driver, whether you're a transit rider, whether you're a cyclist or pedestrian. And the idea is to leverage those funds again, 7 to 10 times. Now, the plan was shaped by a 27-person community group, and they unanimously endorsed this. And we want to make sure that we have a broad coalition of support. We're seeking your support here. The neighborhoods are where a lot of the spending happens. Supervisor Safai has put all his money on traffic calming. Three districts came together and put funds on Mansell. We repaved 19th Avenue and put pedestrian signals and countdown signals up and down 19th Avenue, and we're developing a citywide, set of bus and bike networks as well. So we have hopefully a broad-based expenditure plan, and I would really appreciate your consideration. I know there's just 1 minute left. I guess I'll just end by saying some of the bread and butter things that we need are escalators and elevators in our transit stations. And we also have human beings now in the elevators, in the Bart Muni elevators downtown, which really helps, I think, to give people a sense of security. So some of that funding is also eligible in the new plan as well. A lot of quality of life improvements, lighting, streetscapes, benches for the commercial corridors and the businesses and merchants that are needing our support. So economic recovery and job creation is another co-benefit of this plan, in addition to improving our safety and accessibility for the whole city, neighborhoods and downtown together. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer questions.
What we'll do is we'll hear from Mr. Marceau, and then you guys will have joint questions thrown at you. So Larry, are you ready, Charles?
Yes, starting.
Well, before you start the timer, I would like to make sure my audio is working at acceptable to everyone.
Loud and clear.
All right, great. Let's get going. Thank you. So thank you. I am here tonight to urge a vote no on early reauthorization of Proposition K from 2003. And I want to emphasize, this is early reauthorization. This should not be on the ballot this year. The sales tax already runs for 10 more years. There is some dishonest marketing going on here, not from Tilly. Thank you, Tilly. But the sales tax already goes on for 10 more years, and a new expenditure plan is unnecessary. In every annual financial report, the language that you will see right above me, that the Transportation Authority Board has the authority after 20 years, which is 2023, to rewrite the plan without going back to the voters. This authorizes issuing 30-year revenue bonds in the amount of $1.91 billion in the aggregate, Do you know that the entire borrowing of San Francisco is short of $3 billion, including general obligation bonds and certificates of participation? This is a pattern, this early reauth pattern of going back to the voters to reauthorize and extend the sales tax, is maxing out the credit card and seeking a higher credit limit. Take a look at this. I offer you the spur argument in favor of Proposition K. Now, here it is, half-cent sales tax, and 20% of the total needed would attract 80% in matching federal grants, a 5-to-1 multiple. Well, guess what? This is the marketing for the 2003 Proposition K. Well, I'm afraid, we can ask Tilly, but this was not a 5-to-1 multiple on the 2003 sales tax. You could take a look at the kind of performance here with the Yerba Buena Island project here in the amount of $8 million in the aggregate, which is the major program that you see throughout the 2000s. The sales tax is regressive. Most of it, about 3/5 of it, comes from food, food and grocery and industries and bars here in the city of San Francisco. The voters rejected in 2016 a plan to increase the sales tax to fund transportation, and the FCTA went out and borrowed $270 million against the remaining years of this Proposition K to go out and fund the programs the voters had just rejected anyway. Proposition A did not pass. The city has to go back and seriously re-examine the plans for the post-pandemic era. There's all this talk of the infrastructure plan, but Secretary Buttigieg in the 2023-24 budget rejected San Francisco's proposals, has not chosen to include them, I should say, in the selected programs. There's no guarantee that next year, in the next year's Congress, that the programs will continue to receive funding. It is subject to further congressional review. And by the way, the $550 billion of the infrastructure budget is not inflation adjusted. And there are now estimates with the price of steel increasing by 25% and other elements of the infrastructure bill. There is now the estimate that it's already lost 1/3 or more of its value. Well, and thank you so much. I look forward to tonight's questions. I appreciate the invitation.
Okay. George?
Well, where to start? I would
Starting now.
start by asking both of you, how similar is the SFMTA Prop A bond to the SFCTA proposal? What elements do they share? One was just defeated, and both bonds need a 2/3 majority. And I'm curious. I'll ask you, Tilly.
Sure.
You
Yeah, thanks for the question. The Prop A bond is $400 million property tax. It was for mostly muni and MTA street safety projects. Our measure is 6 times the size of the MTA bond. It's $2.6 billion. And it covers not only city investments like muni and safe streets, it also covers BART and Caltrain, ferry, as well as freeway investments. So a lot more regional, not just local investments. as well as funds for public works and PUC and other infrastructure departments. Imagine the seawall, imagine the Ocean Beach Master Plan and resilience and climate change. And so we have a broader scope. We also do traffic signals and traffic calming and road resurfacing. That's public works, I think I mentioned. I'll also know that it's been a PAYGO program for the 30 years up until 2017. As Larry mentioned, we did take our very first bond out, and it was for the Muni Siemens vehicles to replace the Bredas. I think they've been universally sort of accepted, and people are enjoying the new vehicles. Muni really needed to replace them, and so we've actually used the K to pay for all the rubber tire fleet, the bus fleet replacements, until 2017 as a PAYGO program. So this bonding
Okay,
capacity is $250 million, and it's completely affordable, and there's no problem. We're not going to go anywhere near the $1.9 billion that Larry mentioned.
Thank you, Tilly. Larry.
Behind me is the marketing material for this as yet, unlabeled sales tax expenditure plan. This is the half-cent sales tax. Look at this marketing. It's the same marketing as Proposition A: transit, streets and traffic safety, paratransit operations. It looks like an effort to continue the same programs and the same priorities that the voters just rejected. I do acknowledge there are regional elements here, but the regional elements have their own alternative funding plans and strategies, including their own access to borrowing that is not a regressive sales tax. Again, just please take a moment and look and ask yourself, is this not familiar? We have not yet seen the yes on this campaign get underway, but we all just went through the marketing for Proposition A. And is this not the same marketing? I ask our audience, distinguished audience tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna go, Al.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, things have changed, right, since the pandemic, and I don't know if people are even commuting all that much anymore regionally, and I'm not even sure. I mean, this is going to sound facetious, but do we even need Caltrain anymore? I mean, except to go to the ball game?
Yes, we do. May I answer that, or is that for me? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, no.
Thanks. So
Please.
I think we certainly do, Al. It's for BART, it's for Caltrain, it's for Muni. Caltrain does have low ridership. I think Muni's come back the best out of all of them, but also BART has come back pretty well. We are seeing traffic. It was in the Chronicle this week already coming back to peak pre-COVID levels. Now, Muni over the past several years has been refashioning their lines, right, to be not so downtown oriented, to be more neighborhood oriented. So that's one way that they've adjusted, but people really rely on transit. Not everyone feels comfortable taking it, and that's okay. So we got to make sure that we're planning for the traffic as well. But we can't have a healthy recovery if everyone drives. And so we're planning also for the next 100 years, not the next 5. So these programs are meant to last, 15 years or so, to pull down infrastructure projects that are going to serve our city for generations.
George, that's been 5 minutes. You want one more time period?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
When you're planning for 100 years, take a beat. These are pre-pandemic plans. These plans were not fundamentally restructured to adapt and retool transit to adjust for work from home, population in San Francisco on the decline, reduced commutes, ridership and tourism, and in particular, to have some possibility for a lower sales tax rate in the future in the city of San Francisco. This program commits us to a half-cent sales tax for the next 30 years. And think about it in this way. This is the largest single tax increase, I believe, and this is perhaps off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong, but for a 30-year period, a half-cent sales tax, raising $2.6 billion, put that alongside any other tax measure in the history of San Francisco. I mean, the sales tax for the last 30, for 2003, certainly hasn't raised that level of revenue. And, frankly, I don't think this will raise that level of revenue given the potential decline in the economy here. But this is not a plan that has taken into account the potential recession, the need for fundamental restructuring of our tax code here in the city of San Francisco, for the possibility that economic activity will relocate throughout not just San Francisco, but throughout the Bay Area. What we're building, we're planning to borrow to build heavy infrastructure for the pre-pandemic era. Take a beat. It's a tragedy that if two measures to fund mass transit are rejected back to back here in the city of San Francisco, but it is perhaps a necessary tragedy for the voters to communicate this important message to City Hall and our leadership.
May I respond?
Okay, Mary, please. She's had her hand up a long time.
Hi, thanks. I had a couple of questions, and I don't know if you have answers for them. Basically, when did housing become a transit priority? Why are we building housing on top of Muni as part of the process that Muni's involved in? And why are we spending so much money moving rail lines from one place where they are now to another where they're not? That seems like a waste of taxpayer dollars. And those are the kind of issues I think that may be turning the taxpayers off. Then I have another one, which I think is more about my concerns about rail and the priorities for rail. Why are we spending so much effort trying to get people to take the trains when the trains that we really need right now are the trains that are moving the food or should be moving the food to the ships so they can be loaded and exported? And all that goes for all the supply chain. The supply chain is broken, and the rail is for that supply chain. It seems like it's not getting as much attention as my taking the rail or taking the bus or something in the city. And that's my question sort of to you, whoever wants to take that.
Okay, I'll try to take that.
Priorities.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. For the Muni Potrero Yard project, that is a 100-year-old facility that does not even have pneumatic lifts for the vehicles. It needs to be rebuilt. Muni has agreed to partner with the housing, Mayor's Office of Housing to try and put some housing on top of that facility. However, if that housing does not materialize in time or that financing does not work out, Muni has an off-ramp to build its yard anyway, because that's the priority. The funding is there using our sales tax as well and their own money to rebuild the Potrero Yard. It's a really important bus yard, whether the housing works out or not. But they thought, why not go ahead and try? Because the housing has its own funds, and if it can work out together, great. If it doesn't work out, Muni has the option to basically proceed with its project without the housing. Regarding the rail lines, I'm not really understanding. We don't have freight rail here in San Francisco. It's mostly in the East Bay serving the port. So I don't understand. I'm also not aware of where the rail lines are being moved, but that would be an MTA kind of, I believe, technical rationale for doing so. I believe I answered those questions. And I do want to maybe take a moment to address Larry's questions. Prop A didn't pass, and that's a shame. And our sales tax is not increasing. It is maintaining its half-cent level. The current San Francisco sales tax, by the way, is 8.625%. It's quite modest relative to our neighboring counties and everyone else in the state. You might be surprised that many cities and counties are actually at 10% or more. Alameda has 2 half pennies for transportation. San Mateo has now 2 half pennies for transportation. Santa Clara has 4 half pennies because they really want to bring BART to San Jose, and they've taxed themselves 4 times. Los Angeles also has 4 half pennies. So I happen to be the chair of the Self-Help Counties Coalition, which is the 25 counties that have voted to tax themselves for transportation. And I can tell you that we are falling behind. And if we don't actually renew this measure now, we cannot wait till 2023, Larry, to do this other method. We will miss the window to take advantage of this Congress, this Speaker, this White House, and pull down infrastructure grants for San Francisco to help our recovery and our competitiveness and our quality of life.
George, you're past 20 minutes.
Okay, I have a few more speakers. Do people find this topic of interest or no? I see Thomasita has the last, I'll give her the last word. I had a question, but not to be rude, I think she's had her hand up a long time. And sorry, Charles, we'll just end after her question.
Thomasita, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Tilly, you mentioned, okay, I want to know, does this include slow streets? Because slow streets have been imposed all over the city, and they make people go all around and the streets, and their gasoline gets sprayed all over the city because having to go around the slow streets is oppressive to the people, especially when you don't and consult the neighbors whose streets you're going to close. And you mentioned slow streets as part of what's being funded. This is part of my question.
I said safe streets, safe streets.
Okay, well, safe street, what's the difference between safe streets and slow streets?
Well, that's also it's subject to the decision of our board to allocate any particular grant. Now, of course, a safe street could be the Mission to Geneva improvements. It could be the 19th Avenue, crosswalks and signals and pedestrian crossings and bulb outs. It could be a whole bunch of things. Now, slow streets is a very specific type of improvement, and there have been some slow streets, I think, that have been proposed. But I believe we've only funded neighborways, and that was like on 20th Avenue in District 4. Slow streets is something that is eligible, absolutely would be eligible, but it would require 6 votes at my board to be able to fund it. And as you may know, that our board was divided on the JFK closure. It was a 7-4 vote. And so that's just how things go. The point is these buckets have funding for each type of improvement, and it's up to the board, and every 5 years we do plans to keep up with the what's happening at that time in order to prioritize the funds to specific uses within each category.
Well, the neighborways is just another make work project. You guys keep coming up with new things like Geary Bus Rapid Transit, Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit, Mission, which are oppressive to the businesses. They put little businesses out, they take out the trees, they take out the bus stops, so elderly people have to try to walk 4 blocks between bus stops instead of 2, just for the convenience, so that the little tech workers can get downtown faster. And so the SFCTA has come across to me as a very oppressive organization that just makes these decisions, and it's all to advance the gentrification of our city instead of to make it good for the little people in the neighborhood.
That's enough, yeah.
George, may I just have a couple of minutes?
Because you're second, you have final word, then we're done.
Well, I want to make the point that it is not falling behind for San Francisco's citizens and voters to decide to have a lower sales tax. And I want to, dispute the notion that this is simply maintaining sales tax and nothing is going to change. The authority to borrow here expands dramatically. And to borrow dramatically more while keeping the sales tax the same is like continuing to make the same minimum payment on your credit card while increasing the credit limit and borrowing enormously more funds. Now, okay,
30 minutes.
San Francisco has a large, has a good credit rating and can continue to borrow and before hurting its credit rating. Now, I don't know if this will continue to be true in recessionary times. We don't really know if the pandemic is over, but consider here that we just rejected authorizing, the general obligation bond, Proposition A. This is an enormous authorization to borrow. And just because the underlying funding mechanism doesn't change, remember that. And let's talk about just quickly the federal programs. I showed you the marketing. Spur talked about it even back in 2003. The federal grants are going to multiply the money here. Was the marketing back then? It was false marketing back then. And in these inflationary times, with a dramatic federal deficit, with inflation, with a federal infrastructure program that is not inflation adjusted, with the components hit like steel, prices rising dramatically. It's false marketing again. Nothing in these programs requires that the local match be regressive sales taxes. And, I don't think we need here to commit ourselves to pour concrete to make slow streets permanent, which was a component of Proposition A and will be a component of the continued spending funded by the sales tax here, passed through by the SFCTA. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank both of you. You're both wonderful advocates of your position. And I know it's Friday night and you both had other things to do. So I greatly appreciate you coming. You're welcome to stay and watch other debates. When it comes time to vote on what we prefer, what we don't, everybody has to go except the basic membership, but you're welcome to stay if you like. So let's see. I have to find. Oh, bye, Tilly. Bye, Larry.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks to both of you.
Let's see.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation.
Oh no, we're glad to have you anytime. Claire Zervansky. I think
I did manage to join on my phone. Thank you.
thank goodness. I was getting worried that you wouldn't be here.
Me too. Thanks, George.
So because what Claire has to say, she's a proponent argument for the retiree supplemental cost of living adjustment retirement board contract with executive director. She was also, I believe, the head of that entire, well, you can say what you were, Claire. I'm not quite, you ran everything for a long time there. So I think you're in a great position to talk about it. And just secondhand, Asha, Bill Barnes called and they had time to talk, but only at 6:30 and we didn't have time for them. But for a different
That's
measure.
okay. That's okay.
So we're counting on you to bring it home here
Okay.
on retiree supplemental costs of living.
Thank
Your
you.
5 minutes
Okay.
starts now.
Starting now?
Yes, your 5 minutes starts now.
Yeah.
Okay. This charter amendment is for a small group of retirees. We started out with 8,700 of them. About 5 years ago, we're down to 4,300. We lose about 50 a month. These are all people who retired prior to November 6, 1996. So they worked for the city before we even had Social Security. They make mostly under 20 or 25,000 a year. This cost of living is capped. Anybody who makes, the few who make over 50,000 will not get it. But the rest of us sued the city and the retirement system to get our supplemental COLA back when Sean Ellsburn pulled it out with Prop C back in 2012. Was the first time that any benefits had been removed from city workers. And it's in the charter. It requires that our pension fund be at 100% funding, which doesn't happen all the time, and that it earn over 7.5% in returns. So we're not getting that this year because the returns were well under 7.5%, more like 1.5% returns on investment. I will tell you that while there is a figure in there that the controller had to come up with out of the general fund, it actually is part of the charter requirement for the controller to list that amount of money, but this amendment actually doesn't touch any general fund money. All payments come out of our pension system. Everybody who works in and for our pension system is paid out of our pension fund. There are no city dollars that go into this. It's all based on what we've contributed over the years. There is always, when you have pension systems, an employer contribution that goes in. And so to that extent, yeah, there are some city dollars in there, but that's a formula worked out. Was the city, the school districts and the Superior Court are employers, and those obligations come from their active contracts and the city charter. We anticipate that by January, there will be about 3,500 of our members left. They will not get a retroactive payment. They will only have their monthly stipend adjusted to reflect what they would get if they had won the lawsuit, which is a 5-year increment. We expect they might get up to $200 a month more in their income. If you're living in San Francisco and earning $20,000 or $25,000 a year, that means a lot. And as I said, they're not getting any kind of retroactive payment. There's only 3,500 out of the original 8,700 of them left because they're aging out. They're mostly over 80 or 85. Some of you actually know them from our neighborhoods out in the Excelsior and the Sunset and the Richmond, because 45% of us still live in the city, but it's a small group, it's specialized, and the money is only paid out of our pension fund and not taking anybody else's money. So that's why we want it restored. The issue of the executive director really isn't a major part of this. The city attorney suggested that phrase be added in. The board had already made its own decision regarding how it's hiring its people and in what way. And the city attorney said, our deputy city attorney said, oh, why don't you throw it in the charter? That way the permission is official so that the board can do that under the auspices of the city charter. But the board has that option regardless. And that's a different issue and doesn't really impact what's going on with the retirees. So any questions? And we would appreciate support everywhere we've gone so far. We've been getting support without any objection. So we would appreciate hearing that from CSFN as well.
Questions start now.
Yeah, Mary Eliza has her hand up. She's always a good starting point.
I'm just confused about what you're asking the voters to vote on. Is it to vote on releasing your own money to you at a different pace?
It is about this group of retirees in their 80s who are dying off to have their cost of living, supplemental cost of living restored to them. It was voted in on November 6, 1996. It was taken away by Prop C in 2012. We sued, we got it back for everyone. The court told us to go back to the voters to see if they wanted to restore it to this oldest, poorest group. And yes, it's a matter of giving it so that, you know, the most we get is a 2% cost of living increase based on the charter language, and only when our fund earns over 7.5% rate of return on investments.
Okay,
This
you
would
didn't answer my
increase.
question. All I asked you was, is it
Yes,
releasing your own money? Yes. thank
yes, to this one specific group. The rest of us got it released through the court. Yes.
Okay, well, I have a question. I find this very interesting. Were there any unfunded mandates such as healthcare built into this?
No,
Citizen-
No, this is
No,
only
nothing.
about restoring that. It's a 0.5%, 1%, or 1.5% supplemental COLA based on the excess earnings of our own pension fund. So we only get it when our pension fund earns over a certain amount of money and is over 100% funded. It's a rare time. It happened in the 90s. It's happened in 2015, 15, 16, and
Why,
17.
Claire,
Here's
why do
what
you think
happens.
this?
Let me explain to you. When we retire as city employees, the only thing that governs our benefits is the city charter. We no longer have contracts. We no longer get anything except what's stipulated in the charter. So if we want our benefits restored, or we want benefits, we have to go to the charter, and the voters have to give us those benefits. We don't have them any other way. And it was written that way, I think, because prior to about 1978 or 80, we were required to live in the city in order to work for the city. And then it was determined that that was unconstitutional. We couldn't be required to live in the city. So that's why it was originally written into the charter, and that's never changed.
Okay. More questions. Very interesting topic.
Yeah, we're
We
at the mercy of the voters of the city to get anything.
Well, of course, we should be thinking about helping elderly workers making $25,000 a year.
And you
I
need
can't
to
even.
and you need to understand this. There are some police and fire that are impacted, but basically not. The rest of us are called miscellaneous, and that is who is getting this. That's why the income is so low. Police and fire have different arrangements built in to their contracts and retirement system. The rest of us don't. So when you walk into any city office, who you see, the custodian that's sweeping the floor and polishing the floors in City Hall, person who's taking out the trash, the clerk at the window, those are all your miscellaneous employees. That's everybody else who isn't safety, who isn't police and fire.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? Well, that was a very good presentation. Well, thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Appreciate the
That
opportunity.
actually, oh yeah, that makes things, I understand a complex issue now. I didn't quite grasp.
And we look forward to hearing support, just so in case you're wondering.
So,
Thank you.
I wanna, you're welcome. Thomasita, are you the one who's going to be talking about JFK tonight?
I guess so.
I thought so, because there was another woman's name sent over the email, but it looks like it's going to be you.
Then I think Ven might be her also. You could ask.
Oh, is it who? Is it Ben?
Ven,
No.
are you here to talk about it?
No, I'm just here for moral support.
Oh,
for
good.
Thomasita.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
We look forward to hearing from you, Thomasita.
We can all use moral support. All right.
Okay,
Well-
5 minutes starting now.
All right, so I'm Tomasita Medal, and I'm here to ask you to support reopening JFK Drive in Golden Gate Park and the Upper Great Highway to cars. And it's because we need to share the road. It's a question of accessibility and equity. Both of these roads were designed to transport people to a nature destination, as well as to transport, in the case of the Great Highway, to transport people north-south or south-north without impacting the nearby neighborhoods. Both of these roads have always had designated protected bicycle lanes, as well as designated protected pedestrian and jog lanes on either side of the main street, which had two-way traffic for cars. They served everybody. Then when Main Drive in Golden Gate Park was changed the name under Mayor Shelley in 1967 to JFK Drive, the road was closed to cars from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. on Sundays and holidays. And it was like that for years, decades. And then we succeeded in having the Young Museum rebuild in Golden Gate Park, and people started demanding that the road be closed on Saturdays as well, only for daytime, from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. And so we fought back because we felt that the working class should have at least one day of the weekend where they had full access to all the amenities along JFK Drive, because the road was closed to them on Sunday. So their only day left to them was Saturdays. So we fought, and we took it to the ballot, and there were two competing initiatives to close JFK Drive on Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. One would be immediate, and the other would be when the garage was completed. Both were defeated by the voters. The people did not want Saturday road closure at all. But the bicycle advocates and the rollerblader group demanded that they kept demanding for Saturday road closure. So finally, there was negotiations that with the Park Access for All Coalition, of which I was the founder, and Mary Harris and her group were members, and so was the Coalition for San Francisco Neighbors. And this coalition, Park Access for All Coalition, negotiated a settlement agreement. We negotiated all night and all day. It included all the park institutions. And we came to an agreement where it would be closed, only half the road for half the year would be added. And that has been in effect since 2007, and it was fair. Well, if you want to let it, it wasn't exactly fair, but it was a compromise. And then the mayor used the excuse of the pandemic to close the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's been extremely oppressive, cruel, and mean to those of us with disabilities, the families with multi-generations from all over the city, including the Bayview, the Excelsior, anybody who needs a car to bring all their generations of family to the park, or in the case of Great Highway, to transport themselves to the VA, will say, if they're coming from the southern part of the city. And so we're asking to reopen the roads back to the way they were before the pandemic. That is what our simple petition is. Just go back to how it was before. Like the current Mime Troupe play says, is the title, The Way Things Were. That's what we're simply asking. Fairness and equity and accessibility for everyone. Share the roads. There's no way for the disabled and the elderly and families with multi-generations from other parts of the town or from elsewhere to have equal access without reopening the roads. If you want to ask me about what the Rec and Park has so-called mitigation, you can ask me. But all I say is there's no equal access without reopening the road to cars. So those of us who need a car to get around and to transport our elders, our disabled, ourselves. For myself as a disabled person, the only way I have independence is by being able to drive myself from here and there. So we need that human respect and that compassion for those who are vulnerable and for the multi-generational families. So please support reopening JFK Drive and oppose the initiative that was put on the ballot by the supervisors Melgar, Ronan, Mandelman, and Dorsey to make the road closure permanent. Please oppose that. That was put as in response to our advocacy, our putting this, bring it to the people. The people spoke up before and said, don't close the roads. We're asking you again, reopen the roads. Stick up for everybody. So there's equal access for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, questions? You know, you have a lot of friends, so I'm looking.
I love you.
Well, I'm gonna start then, and some of your friends will jump in. Some of you know my situation, and I used to drive on JFK to get wherever I needed to go. And the one time I did go by myself, I had a lot of trouble because of not strength or whatever, but I had bikes just whizzing by me constantly, and I had to be very careful. So I found it to be, I know Thomasita is talking about the actual roads, and I get it, because that's much better for me. But when you're out there, it's a very dangerous place to be if you're elderly or you can't walk as well or that kind of thing. So my thoughts.
Okay, may I you want to ask me a question? I want to ask every member of this organization that if you guys vote as a group to support reopening the road as you have in the past, in fact, just a few months ago, if you would please take that position again. I also want to give you the phone number. First of all, there's this person who is for the campaign is the volunteer coordinator, and where the campaign has written some statements from different groups to sign on to. So if your group would want to sign on, so like we'll say, oh my neighbors in action, he'll come to your house and get your signature to sign for your organization to sign on. Not just where it says Coalition for San Francisco Neighborhoods, but the other individual organizations are invited to sign on as well. And this young man's name is Raz. And let's see, so I go.
Put the information in the chat.
Okay.
Hi, this is Ben. I dropped it in the chat box for everyone.
Thank
So I shared his name and his email address, Tomasita.
Okay, but I'm
Thank
gonna,
you, Ben.
here's his cell phone number.
Oh,
It's not necessary.
Oh, okay. Okay, so please contact him if you'd like to sign on as soon as
Conduct a meeting.
possible. Thank you.
Now, thank you, Thomasita. That was very good. We're now at a point of gross receipts tax. And I think that would be Peter Stevens, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yep, that's me.
And there he is. Well, when he says 5 minutes, you're on.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Wonderful. Okay, my name is Peter Stevens. I work for Build Affordable Faster, and I'm here to urge your support on the gross receipts to fund guaranteed income and small business assistance measure. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're going to tax e-commerce to then fund a guaranteed income program and small business assistance. Right now, the e-commerce function is taxed at a rate that is similar to our local brick and mortar retail. And for us, this is about fairness. We think they should be in the rate of conventional warehouse businesses. So essentially, we're just moving their gross receipts rate into a higher bracket, and then we're going to use that income to fund a permanent guaranteed income program, which is very exciting. San Francisco has a lot of guaranteed income pilots. We have done a lot of work around this issue. We have the Guaranteed Income Advisory Group that is currently working with the mayor and the board of supervisors. They recently codified some recommendations. And so really what we're trying to do is take the next step to provide a permanent source of funding to the work that is currently being done. So 70% of the revenue will go to a guaranteed income program, 15% goes to small business assistance, and then 15% goes to the general fund. So basically what we're trying to do is capture some of the revenue that's leaving San Francisco for some of the larger players like Amazon, Apple, all that, and really bring it down to support, our local community in a time when, a lot of people are struggling and a lot of small businesses are struggling. We just want to make sure that we're providing for them. Another thing this does is it will raise the gross receipts, the Prop C homelessness one. So it will add, I believe, about 17 million towards homelessness prevention measures as well. That is the very quick and dirty rundown of this. I'll just use the rest of my time for questions, and please support us.
Well, I have one. I know the answer, but for those who don't, could you explain gross receipt taxes?
Yeah, sure. That's a good thing to know. So essentially, in San Francisco, we switched from a payroll to a gross receipt system, the theory being that it's more equitable and that employers aren't going to immediately just cut people who work for them when times get tighter. So it's just the accumulation of all of kind of the revenue that they get in general. And so really what we're proposing, and it's a pretty complicated system, different businesses work in different brackets. And so that's kind of why we're saying we want to bump up e-commerce that essentially functions as a warehouse out of the retail space, because we don't think that's properly classified, and bump it into the kind of the warehousing rate, which is more on point with what they're doing. Is that an explanation that's good? People have questions?
I had
Mary Eliza.
Yeah, I had a
I
couple of
see.
questions, if that's
Oh,
okay.
you do not. Okay. No,
Wait,
question.
am I talking now?
Mari has questions, George.
I asked her. Yeah, hi, Mari. Go ahead.
Hi, I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay, I find this a little confusing. The idea of warehousing being something that is just like in PDR spaces, or is this in a particular kind of a zone or a use? How do you determine which businesses you're going to apply this to?
Yeah.
And is it like wholesale? I'm a little confused about which businesses you're applying this to.
Yeah, so I would think of it more as business function than necessarily as type of business. So this will be targeting business functions that are kind of warehousing, shipping, and delivery of goods. So for example, I think
Amazon.
Yeah, so think of Amazon basically, or a company like that does do retail to wholesale. But it's the function would be if you placed an order online and then they ship it to your house, that is the business function that we would be taxing. So if you think about some place like Apple, they have retail stores. We would not be taxing those retail stores. So if you go into Apple and buy a computer, then this would not apply. However, if you order one that's then shipped overseas to you, it would apply to that. So I think what helps me think about this is it's really we're targeting a certain business function and one that we think really pulls equity out of San Francisco.
Okay, number one, is this only applied to businesses that have headquarters in San Francisco? Or does this apply, and how are you going to track this? This seems like a really hard thing for you to know, how to track it.
Yeah, I would have to get back on how this would be tracked. It's something that this, the gross receipts system already does, right? There's a lot of rates. They have to track all of kind of how these classifications work. So that's currently built into how San Francisco tracks gross receipts in general. I can look into it, but I'm not an expert on that part of it. And then it's whatever is shipped to an address in San Francisco. So the business doesn't have to necessarily have their headquarters in San Francisco.
Okay, what about all the stolen packages?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question
Well,
I think.
that's different.
Yeah. that
Okay,
would-
I'm done, sorry.
Yeah, we're against stolen packages.
I am also against stolen packages.
I don't know, Glenn. So, Al, you're on deck here.
Yeah, just a quick question. I was wondering, what about companies like Twitter that are, they're making money online, but they're not really moving any products, any physical products?
Yeah, unfortunately, this would not apply to Twitter. If you can think of a good way that we can grab some of that money, I'd love to hear it.
Well, it was the payroll tax, right? But,
Yeah, fair.
Okay, thanks.
Businesses file gross receipts returns with the city. So there is a system for that already. This would have to be added to that system through the city and county.
Well, Peter, what would be, just another simple question, the rate of this tax? Do you know what the increase would be?
Yeah, so
Where is it right now? And how substantial would the increase be?
the rate right now is about 0.224%. We're proposing that it goes up to 0.665, which comes out to about a 0.4% increase. So about $4 for every 1,000, or 4,400. Sorry, 4,400 for every million. So it's not a huge increase.
Could I ask one more question? I was wondering how it would be collected. Who would be collecting it? Would it be sent out by the comptroller's office? I mean, the
City tax
assessor's
collector.
office, or?
City tax collector.
Yeah. So we're not like really creating anything new. It's like the system is already in place. We're just shifting like the category that this is being taxed on from one rate to a different one. So the system is already in place.
Okay. I think I'm good. It's
Thank you, Peter.
it's unique. It seems like it's going to be hard to always collect or know what the amount is. I'm sure you guys are smart enough to figure out the tracking. I don't envy you though, but but I really do want to thank you for coming down at a short notice like this, and say hi to Tim.
Oh, will do.
And let me see. I really can't think of anything else, but what we're gonna do now, I don't want to get rid of you, but I have to get rid of you because the group is going to vote now. And that means only members of the committee can stay. So you might look around for another 5 seconds at our faces. But then you gotta go.
Hey, thank you all. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Bye. Okay.